How's it going, everyone? My name is Dan, but you can call me Malone, and today I want to talk about an article which appeared in The Independent this week about pensions auto-enrolment in Ireland. Before we get started, if I could ask that you take just 2 seconds out of your day to leave a like on the video, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Also, let me know if you have any finance questions specifically related to Ireland in the comment section. Okay, so the article published by The Independent is all about auto-enrolment for pensions in Ireland. Minister for Social Protection Heather Humphreys is looking for permission from the Cabinet to start drafting legislation which will form the basis of auto-enrolment. First things first, what is auto-enrolment? Auto-enrolment is effectively a policy that is introduced by the government which results in employees being automatically enrolled in a pension scheme. Being enrolled in a pension scheme just means that a percentage of your salary or wage each month is taken and placed into an investment fund. This fund will use your money to invest in the likes of company stocks in the hope that when you reach retirement, the money you invested will have grown to a nice amount, which you can use to replace the money you're no longer earning by virtue of being retired. There's also lots of lovely tax benefits you get for investing that money, but more on that later. As things currently stand, 35% of employees in the private sector in Ireland have no pension outside of the state pension. That's more than 1 in 3. That's because in order to be invested into a pension, the current system requires the employee to opt into the pension on their own accord. So they have to contact HR or whoever manages payroll and tell them that they want to start investing into a pension. After a tedious back and forth with HR, eventually the particulars will be ironed out and money will start to be invested. Now, the fact of the matter is that Irish people, for the most part, don't understand pensions. Or rather, they might get the general gist of pensions but are missing some key facts. But I think it's fair to say that for the average person, if this isn't done for you, it's unlikely that you'll go out and do it yourself, and the stats confirm this. If your employer isn't communicating with you about your pension options, you might go decades without even knowing they're there, especially if you've no interest in any finance related things. And as we'll discuss, one of the key ingredients to success for pension investing and investing in general is time. The earlier you start, the better your results will be. Auto-enrolment is a policy which is introduced to solve this problem. Instead of relying on a system where employees have to make the decision for themselves to invest in a pension, the opposite occurs. Under auto-enrolment, you're automatically invested into a pension and a portion of your wage will be taken and invested each month from day one. The pension process would now be operating on an opt-out basis, in that you, the employee, would have to contact HR or whoever manages payroll to stop your pension investments, rather than start them. Interestingly, this type of policy follows the concept of nudge theory, which is the idea that if you positively reinforce something, you can influence the decisions of individuals. By encouraging pension investments through auto-enrolment, the government is trying to get people to stay invested in pensions and potentially even increase the amount they invest. But why would they want to do that? Let's start off with the obvious one. If you were to retire tomorrow in Ireland on nothing but the state pension, you'd receive an income of just over €13,000 per year. Clearly, 13 grand is not a lot of money to live on by today's standards. Your financial goal for retirement should be to save and invest enough money so that when you do retire, you experience no fall in your standard of living. What that means is that your savings and investments should fully replace the salary which you were earning up until the day you retired. Now, the vast majority of us will be earning more than 13 grand per year on the day we retire, meaning, by definition, if we have no pension outside of the state pension, we will experience a fall in our standard of living, and more than likely that fall will be significant. So one of the reasons why a government would introduce auto-enrolment would be to help their citizens to become more financially secure in retirement and to maintain a somewhat reasonable standard of living. Now you might say to me, Dan, just because someone doesn't have a pension, that doesn't mean they don't have savings in the bank to support them. And yes, that's true. Most people will put money aside in a bank account to save for retirement. However, the biggest issue with doing so is that bank accounts provide virtually no return on investment, meaning once the money is in the bank account, it's not growing. And if the money isn't growing, it's losing value each and every year to inflation. Even though the money in your bank account physically hasn't gone anywhere and the numbers haven't changed, its ability to buy things in the economy reduces over time. And the only way to prevent that from happening is to invest our money so that it can grow at a faster rate than the rate at which prices in the economy are increasing. The government knows this, which is why they want you to invest. We mentioned earlier about the lovely tax benefits associated with pension investing. Tax relief going into the fund, in the fund, and coming out of the fund. And the reason why that's the case is again to encourage you to invest. You need to realize these policies don't just exist for the good of their health. There's always a reason. The other reason why the government would introduce auto-enrolment in Ireland is because they have a very serious problem on their hands. Believe it or not, but the state pension, which many people think is guaranteed in retirement, is actually far from it. Without going into too much detail, you're more than likely aware that you pay a tax called PRSI, which stands for Pay-Related Social Insurance. That tax goes into a big pool of money called the Social Insurance Fund. And among other things, the Social Insurance Fund is used to pay out state pension payments to retirees. This system effectively involves the workers of today paying for the retirement of the retirees of today, in the hope that they too receive the same benefit in the future. The problem is that the number of people aged 65 and over in Ireland is set to double by 2050, without a corresponding increase in the number of workers. Now, what this means is that the ratio of workers to retirees will go down, meaning there's less money to go around. Long story short, the state pension system as it currently exists is not built to support that many people in retirement. So from the government's perspective, if they could get more people to invest in private pensions, then that could take some pressure off of the state pension. But the question we need to ask ourselves is whether auto-enrolment will actually do anything meaningful in terms of solving a problem. We know that the proposed system for auto-enrolment will likely mirror the older propositions which were made back in 2018. We also know that employees will be automatically enrolled into pension funds at a low percentage of salary amount initially, as low as 1.5%. Then, over time, that amount will be increased all the way up to 6% of salary after 10 years. Meaning, when auto-enrolment is first rolled out, you'll only be opted in for 1.5% of your salary. With auto-enrolment comes mandatory matching policies for employers, which just means that employers will be forced to match whatever you put into your pension pot up to a certain limit. So in the first year, if you put in 1.5% of your salary, your employer will have to match that 1.5%. On top of that, the state is planning to match 1/3 of whatever the employee invests. So by investing 1.5%, you get another 0.5% from the state. In effect, you receive €7 in your pension for every €3 you invest under auto-enrolment. I'll be blunt, this solves nothing. Yes, automatically enrolling employees into pension funds solves the problem of pension adoption. However, that means absolutely nothing if the amounts invested are not significant. The reason why 90% of workers in this country aren't on track for a financially comfortable retirement is because A, people don't start investing early enough, and B, they don't invest enough over the course of their working lives. The politicians can get their accolades for increasing pension adoption to 100%, which you'll probably see in the news whenever it happens, but in reality, no problems are solved without sufficient investment amounts. So why isn't 1.5% of your salary a significant amount? Well, if you compare this to what's allowed under tax law, you'll see why. An individual under the age of 30 can invest up to 15% of their salary into a pension fund tax-free. And that's just the starting point. By age 60, this limit increases to 40% of your salary. So we have one piece of legislation, the tax legislation, which encourages large pension investment amounts. And then we have another piece of legislation, auto-enrolment, which is starting off very small. This to me seems counterintuitive. Bear in mind that in many areas of the private sector, employers already require their employees to invest a portion of their salary into a pension, and they often match that contribution and then some. But yes, auto-enrolment will help to bring the laggards in line. Many business owners will likely argue that having a mandatory pension contribution cost is an unfair burden in the post-pandemic era. However, this is one of the times where I fundamentally disagree. Employers should be supporting the financial futures of their employees, and I'd go as far as saying that they have a responsibility to do so beyond paying their wages. I'm also expecting that among the 35% of private sector workers with no pension, there will likely be some backlash against auto-enrolment, because to many, this will seem like another tax introduced by the government which is reducing their take-home pay. And that brings me to the most important point of this video. Auto-enrolment, in my opinion, does not work without financial education. You can get people in the door, but unless they understand why they're in the door, then it's fruitless. So what's the conclusion on auto-enrolment? Yes, I think it's good that moves are being made to introduce it, but I can't help but feel that this is more of a political headline than a move to actually solve the pension problem in Ireland. A phased introduction over 10 years isn't going to help anyone. Change needs to happen hard and fast. Yes, the government will be contributing to the schemes themselves, and yes, employers will be required to match employee investments. But if the employees themselves are not investing meaningful amounts, which in my opinion is at least 10% of salary, then it's just not enough. And in order to convince people to invest significant amounts into pensions, you need financial education, which I believe the government is glossing over. Unfortunately, the pension problem doesn't live in isolation. Rising house prices and rental costs, as well as high inflation, makes it increasingly difficult to put money away for retirement. Couple this with poor overall financial literacy among the general population, and yeah, the government has their work cut out for them. Let me know what your thoughts are on pensions in Ireland, auto-enrolment, and what you'd like to see change in the future. So I really do hope you enjoyed the video here today. As always, if you did enjoy the video, please do let me know in the comment section below. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.